Okay. I guess it counts the same. I guess you just let me know. So, welcome, Sarah Yip, to the Spiritual Seekers podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. Sarah is a numerologist I've been following for years and years. I actually don't know when I began following you, but
Some centuries ago.
yeah, right. Sure, we roll back a few times, but I'm just so grateful that you agreed to be on here. So welcome.
Oh, yeah, thanks so much. I've been listening to your podcast to prepare and doing some meditations, and I can feel it's going to be a really good one. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So like I know last year I had reached out to you and then like kind of dropped the ball, and then I just it was so spontaneous a couple weeks ago where I was like I saw something you posted. I was like, let me just reach out now again. And then you like contacted me almost right away, and I was like, oh geez, like I was still actually in bed because it was early.
Yeah, that was a funny phone call, actually, because then we did video.
Yeah, I know.
But that's
So,
okay, because like half the time I'm in my pajamas too, and I think that's totally okay.
yeah, it's all good. I was like, well, I don't have makeup on, but that's all right. Um, but yeah, so I guess like I figured out my own numerology when I was in high school. I didn't know
Oh,
that numerology was a field of study at all. And I just knew that I recognized number patterns with the people that I was close to. I
yeah,
had like a connection with the number three. All my brothers were threes, 21, 30,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
12th.
yeah,
And so I just
yeah.
had this own pattern that I recognized. And then later I realized numerology was this whole field of study. So I've been interested in it peripherally for since I was a teenager, and I'm 45 now. So and then somewhere along the way on Facebook, I don't know when, how, whatever, I saw you, and you call yourself the numbers queen, right? So
Well, I got called the numbers queen, and then it kind of stuck around, so I just went with it because it had a nice numerology, and I don't know, it was okay. Like it kind of felt like pretty cool. Sometimes I'm not sure about it because it feels a little bit bigger than me, but then I guess this type of work always is.
right,
And
right.
as I grow into the name, it sort of becomes more and more like luxurious. And to be totally honest, because I do a lot of name consults with people, if people keep using a name, then it's the right name.
Right.
Whereas if you change your name and no one uses it, it's not a good fit. It's not really an alignment. It's probably just more from like trying to be something that you're not. So I
Right.
think the fact that everyone just kept using it, I went, okay, cool. I'm going to just trust that's probably the spirit of my business.
Yeah, yeah. And my claim to fame in the spiritual world is that I was born at 111. So that's always been a thing. So why, I guess just starting from like the bottom, like the numerology is like, the adding of numbers and the vibrations of the numbers themselves. And then side note, which I think is totally interesting, is in interpreting the numbers as the shape that they are, like the number 6 being like a pregnant belly, and like 7 being
Yeah,
like an arrow. Like I love that. That's so fascinating. And that's a newer
sure.
realization to me, but just, I guess, give people an understanding of what we're talking about.
Oh, sure. Right. Well, firstly, thanks everyone for the opportunity. And I hope that this will spark something that will, keep you going for many years. So the greatest gift of numerology is compassion and forgiveness for yourself and others, especially your family. I've seen a lot of families come back together after doing each other's numbers, and it really makes me happy. So numerology is mathemagic. So it's numbers before they got dehydrated and processed into what you probably learned in high school. So if
Mhm.
you think of it a bit like the difference between kind of junk food and whole foods, numerology is what numbers were when they first came off the tree of life.
Hmm.
And so they're much more interesting and much more, how do I put it, like attractive. And you find actually once you start doing it, you can't stop. So that's the basic thing. It has been taught for thousands of years, and I think it was probably brought to earth with people
Mhm.
because it allows people to understand themselves. And so when you hear, like, say, parents say things like, my child didn't come with an instruction booklet, I actually disagree with that. I think very much that our date of birth and a few other of our features, because I also read hands and faces, I think these are all actually dead giveaways, and it's more sometimes we're too afraid to know, or we are prevented from knowing.
Mhm.
Absolutely, people do come with a lot of helpful information in their bodies and in their numbers. And if we choose to use that, life is much easier. And we also create pathways for others where they don't have to keep comparing themselves to us, which is very, very
Yeah.
powerful for children in particular.
It's nice to have that kind of awareness and that insight.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was really cool that my own kids picked their birthdays as they did. Like I was supposed to be I thought I was in labor and I wasn't. I was sent home. And I remember going home on November 2nd being like, it can't be today. It doesn't feel right. Today's not the right day. And then November 3rd, I went back and, was induced and I had my first. And then my second child, they wanted to do a C-section like that day. And I freaked out because I really wasn't expecting it. So they're like, go home, hysterical woman, come back on Friday and we'll do the C-section like planned. And I'm like, all right, like whatever. I couldn't be there that day. So I was fine with leaving. And then on Thursday, I went into labor. So Andrew picked his birthday, so I love that my kids like really actively chose their birthdays. It wasn't like, because, the whole time going into the, those weeks, my kids were both late. So you're just like, every day you're kind of like feeling into the vibration. Like, I don't think today's the right day. I don't like the numbers, So, but I not with any knowledge other than it didn't feel right. So.
Yeah. And in the end, especially a spirit, they don't have the limitations and the fears and the doubts that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're very comfortable just asking for what they want and need. And in the end, your date of birth absolutely sets the foundation for your whole life. And it's like one of the only things you cannot change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that, it's good to approach it wisely, but also to trust that absolutely your baby has spirit guides and protection and information. And it's already, pretty organized. You don't have to like micromanage that whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then, I work with people who are having C-section and then we look at the different life paths. But in the end, as you've mentioned, the child is very much in control. And I think that's perfect.
And then with the numbers, like, so it's not just the numbers of the time you were born and the date you were born, but it also is the vibration of the letters breaking down into numbers too. So
that's right. So your soul contract can be broken down into codes, numbers, or music, whatever, however you want to look at it, or hieroglyphs. And so we start with the life path as just the introduction, and you've got to think of it like the heads and the shoulders of a person. It's just an introduction. It's not everything that you are. And then we look at things that also like the name, and then we look at things like the timing, the grids, and there's actually several pieces of information you need to put together to be accurate when you're describing someone, and especially if you're going to be doing forecasts, which is what I specialize in. Mm-hmm. But it's not hard to learn. It's probably just more, you really have to let go of a lot of judgment. So it's actually better to do or learn numerology when you're probably already a bit versed in some other type of healing, like maybe Reiki, counseling, coaching, because mm-hmm. you need to be able to support yourself as you go through this shedding of your own, like I said, prejudices and judgments, especially of those people who you'll be reading for, mm-hmm. Analyzing. Mm-hmm. So it's probably best used as part of like a suite of gifts. And it often is, to be honest, the type of person who's drawn to it is normally, I think, already, pretty active.
Mm-hmm. I know my teacher will be like, oh, you're in a whatever year, you're in a 9 year, you're in a 1 year, whatever it is. And she'll break it down because she's got 20 more years experience than me. So she's got more knowledge in her brain than I do. So I'll be like, okay, like, and then I'll look up what she's talking about, so I don't always actively know. And then I know that like when the calendar year changes, some people say once it's your birthday, then that's your year, but other people say once the calendar year changes, that's your year. So it can be conflicting, I'm sure.
So obviously it's just like learning a language. The teacher is going to work from like some defined information, and then there's going to be some stuff that they've just learned or tested for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I just always recommend it is okay to have different teachers, and that's actually quite healthy. Mm-hmm. But it's always beneficial to really fully learn and test out a system before you go jumping around. Otherwise, often you'll give up, and it's a shame because then you don't get the benefits.
Right.
So even if I just show you like a screenshot, just tell me when you can see it. Just let me know when you can see this picture.
Sure, I can see it.
Okay, so just a sec. So because obviously visual is easier to learn, especially if you're teaching younger people. Or even people who've had, a level of trauma or stress, it's easier sometimes to just conceptualize it. So as you can see, this is a body. And so this is not something I invented at all, but it's something I've heavily tested and refined over 10 to 15 years. So the idea is if you want to teach numerology quickly, you simply just connect it back to its origins, which is, of course, the chakras. And you would be familiar with that, yeah?
Yeah, I work with the chakras heavily.
Exactly. And so that's why I'm very passionate about introducing numerology to practitioners who are very comfortable working with chakras, colors, crystals, because it's this incredible enhancement. And it also creates a lot of flow and loyalty with your clients And it's just so damn interesting, really. So we have 1, of course, being the root chakra, 2, the sacral, 3, the solar plexus, 4, the heart. That makes sense. Yeah, it's pretty basic. 5 is the throat, 6 is the third eye, 7 is the crown chakra. Now, the 8th and the 9th, there's some conjecture about this. It's each to their own at this point. But, generally higher chakras connected to like the human race, your sort of soul history, the galactic things. I mean, this is probably the area where there's not as much agreement. But the good news is, of course, the first 7, they're pretty set in stone, as you know. And so, of course, straight away, this is why I love to teach lots of people quickly, but also go deep with others, because, this is very beneficial. If you know you're a life path 1, straight away, that this person, the first part of their life is often where a lot of the learning has happened. It could be around, for example, their conception, the mother's pregnancy, the birth, the first year of life. And often, therefore, the root chakra does need a lot of support, like throughout their lifetime. And often when they are floundering, the first thing you look at with this life path 1 is their root chakra. Are you doing things one at a time? Are you grounded?
How would people figure that out?
Just
to like go back and be.
Absolutely. So let's just go back one little tick. So this is just my website, sarahayip.com. So there's lots of really interesting, a lot of it's free as well. So there's a little calculator. Let me just go down. Hang on. I think it should just pop up. Oh, here we are. So look, it looks more complex than it is. Essentially, you just add up your date of birth from left to right.
Right.
And so, like, here's mine. So I'm born on the 27th. Oh, sorry, excuse me. So it's a bit of I definitely want to improve this. But this is what we have for the moment, okay? But you can just do it on a piece of paper in like 5 seconds. Okay. 1. So, it's hard to see, I realize that. But basically, 27th of January, 1981, added up left to right, you get 29. So this is called the add-across system for life paths. Now, not every numerologist uses it. Maybe like half do. I find it the most accurate for predictions. I like it because the other systems where you reduce all the numbers, I feel like you lose a lot of the information and the turning points. This is just a personal preference.
Right. So
I'm a 29, and then, of course, you add 29 together. 2 plus 9 is 11. So I'm a 2911, add it together becomes a 2. So those are really important ages for me, and having done a lot of work, I actually know exactly what happened there. For example, 29, I picked up numerology, which it's kind of cool when you look back at it. And so, straight away, once you get people adding up their date of birth, like really beautiful things happen. Very, very commonly, people will say, oh, I had a child at that age. Oh, that's when I started my business. And then it's often something that's actually really important to their purpose. And it's often what they will go on to teach about. It's not always a fun thing, but it's usually something significant and important. Every now and then when you talk about turning points, people go blank. I find with those people, often it needs to be done in private or in their own time, maybe with some meditations around the heart. Often the mind is trying to shut it down, because once you introduce numerology, you basically can't deceive yourself anymore. And if you do have a lot of fear and doubt operating, it will sometimes try to stop you from learning. Like, you have to go to your numerology class, but your car breaks down, or you can't find the Zoom link, or,
Right.
But I work through that with people because I've learned holistic counseling, and I've worked with a lot of students, and there's just some classic things that will pop up. People do have a fear of numbers, which is unfortunate, because, of course, the fear of numbers then translates into things like the fear of money, and the fear of like organization and all kinds of stuff. I'll just stop this for a minute. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to find the picture. I've had a very long week.
Yeah, you did.
So yeah, look, it's really easy to find your life path. And then, of course, playing with that is so the best thing you could do, which is basically free entertainment. So we know with you, Karen, having looked at your date of birth, you're also an 11. And no doubt a lot of your listeners will be 11s, because we absolutely attract what we are.
Right, for sure.
And of course, the type of person who would listen to a spiritual podcast almost always sees 1111, has master numbers somewhere in their chart. So pretty much can put money on that one.
Yeah.
So as an 11, what it means basically is, you're doing a lot of healing at the root chakra level, but also at the sacral. And of course, this is just a very basic intro. But I'm sure there would be aspects of your life, around your own reproduction, your own adrenals and things, where over time you can definitely see a pattern.
Right.
So yeah, what I love about it is it's just really simple, and then people start to be able to correlate things. As an example, 2023 adds to 7.
Right.
Yeah, so this is a year for the whole universe, well, particularly the Earth universe, to heal its crown chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time we were in a year like this was 2014, and then it's every 9 years, basically 2005. So there'll definitely be similarities in what people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
The crown chakra, as you see, is the limit of the body, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the next couple of years after this, we're really stepping into the unknown, the Wild West, and people are feeling that, and they're a bit scared, but some
Mm-hmm.
people are also excited. 7, of course, is very much a center for spirituality and knowing. This is the most fantastic year. You could be learning anything to do with spirit, because in those 8 and 9 years, you could often turn it into a business or a community, or a lot of people might need it. So it's just a really fantastic year to, yeah, be upgrading your knowledge.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we know also 7s do tend to overthink. So the people who are blocking that, they don't want to know. A lot of them are getting, it could be all kinds of things. It could be headaches or just a lot of confusion, or even paranoia for some people. They're like, oh, I know there's something bigger, but I'm scared of it. And my best advice there is, get into a group.
Mm-hmm.
We are designed to evolve as a group, not by ourselves. If you're by yourself, there's always a sense of fear and defensiveness because you can't necessarily protect yourself. So you're never able to fully concentrate and relax.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far?
No, my brain is going to other things like,
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to those other things, which I'm sure are very, very interesting. What
well,
are the
just
other
like
things that are popping up?
the house number thing, or people like change the vibration of their house number because they're like, oh, this energy isn't something I want. Like if they end up in a house where they don't like my house is 77, but I'm okay with that. But I know that like if you wanted more stable, and I have a client who does numerology, and I told her my old address was 112, and she goes, ooh, money probably flew right out the door with that one, or something, like whatever she said about money and the number 112. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Like that was a tough 5 years that we lived at that house. So
Well, it's yeah, I'll just show you very briefly. So this is one of my articles. So I have 800 articles on my site.
oh
So you
wow.
can just look it up. So what your house number means. This has gone around the world many, many times. So I think, many real estate agencies have basically used this. And I've talked to a lot of investors about it. So basically, in a nutshell, it just talks about all the different house numbers and what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
So look, the house number 4, for example, hang on, you were in a 4 house and you've moved to a 5 house, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the 4 house is for healing your heart. So it's actually a really good place to create stability and commitment, but it can make you overly inflexible. It can bring up any areas where you're already stuck and that kind of thing. And look, you're in a number 5 house now, which is interesting because you said it was a 77.
Yeah.
77 is a very spiritual house, of course, double crown chakra and throat chakra energies. So, for example, spiritual teacher has a 77 vibration. So if you were a spiritual teacher, that would be a good place to live. But if you had some addictions, that could also be an issue. So it's really about matching. You've got to think of numbers a bit like colors. It's about matching things and creating harmony. But even that said, sometimes people love contrast. You can have numbers that generally don't go together, but they're very happy. And that could be because of free will, karma, soul contracts. Some people just like a challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm very careful not to be formulaic and say, if you're this number, you need this house. If you're this number, you can only marry this person. That's the old style of numerology. That's very like top down, heavy, disempowering, I think. I think there's guidance you can give, but in the end, people are going to do what they want to do. You just got to support them. It's a bit like having kids, really.
And it's funny, my husband was born at 933, which I think is cool, and he's the life path 1. So do you also offer like readings of like compatibility with couples and numbers and things like that? And
so I'm very, very structured with how I do my readings.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just show you an example, like a blank example? Is that okay?
By the way, you're in Australia and it's 10 a.m. your time and it's 8 o'clock my time. So how did you get into it at 29? What got you into it?
Oh, okay. So I'll show you that later. Or it's okay.
Yeah. I'm just curious. Like, I'm like, I want to get
leave that one though.
Looking for information.
Yeah. I'll just leave that. I'll leave that. Look, I always start with the basic life path charts. I look at the life path, the numbers in the date of birth, personal years, the name, and we just get all the foundations right. And then we might spiral off into like partner numerology, kids, house numbers. My big focus right now is business numerology and using that to help people be successful. But I think it's really important to know your numbers, because if you don't, you're sort of just shooting in the dark.
Right.
Like you can't just say, you know, a 5 house is lucky. It doesn't, it's just sort of BS. It just depends on what you're working with to begin with. You really got to have a connection between your chart and the number. But that said, people feel things. People are intuitive. So very often, they already have a feeling. It's just when you show them the numbers, they're sure. So I always say use the numbers to back yourself up, but don't choose your partner based on their life path. That's really giving too much sway to the outside world. Like use it more to back yourself up when you're not quite sure. You got two choices, do the numbers, it'll be obvious.
Yeah, I know. There was no denying the chemistry I had with my husband. I wasn't researching, his astrology and his numbers before I decided to.
Yeah, they make it easy. And like I'm an 11 and my husband's a 1. And a lot of the people I know, they're also married to a 1. And that's again, like attracts like.
Yeah, that's funny. We both have 11s and we're with 1s.
Well, it's funny and it's not funny because like in a way that's probably maybe one reason that you liked my type of numerology, is that it could apply to your own life.
Yeah, it was just your delivery and how you shared your information. But so you were what, you said you worked for the UN or something before that, or?
Oh, right. Yeah. So my training is in science, but science with the focus on the environment. So I've been very involved in like activism, charity, fundraising, save the whales, all that stuff. And I'm still very, very interested in all that. And it's very common for people with some kind of starseed energy or who see 1111 to have that interest in the wider world. So yeah, I guess I just went through the ranks very quickly and I achieved a lot of what I wanted to do by about 24. So I was working for the UN at about 24, which is pretty early, after working for the Australian government. And then I was being harassed and I ended up being a whistleblower, and it was fatal to my career. But it allowed me to free myself from a lot of illusions that I needed to be part of this kind of structure in order to save the world. I realized very quickly that sometimes those big structures can hide a lot of corruption or like, you know what I mean? So instead of sort of thinking bigger is better, that's when I developed this idea of better is better. So I went really small. I started working with startups, NGOs, fundraising, and then that's then propelled me into having my own spiritual business. I got pretty burnt out of working in the charity field because, it's just never ending. It's just never ending. It's just always more and more pain. And I couldn't cope. I have very soft skin and I was just taking on too much. But it was useful, all those things were useful because it means I'm not afraid of working with corporates or government or people who work in those areas. And I like helping people raise money, and then I apply that in the spiritual field. And that adds a level of, I guess, edginess or maybe discipline to what I do. And I've been now in the numerology field for about, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And I'd say I've been pretty successful. And one of the reasons I think is that I'm very consistent. Like it's very easy to do a good reading here and there. And it's very easy to say, follow my advice. But to really stay the distance, it takes a lot because it means you have to be willing to apologize. You have to keep evolving. You have to have a team. And so, I have a beautiful, amazing network who support me. And it's made all the difference. So I absolutely would have given up 50 times over by now.
I think I followed you before you even had kids. So like, that's why I was like, oh my God, it's been a long time. Like I remember watching you be pregnant and like being like, of course the child was born on this day at this time or whatever.
Yeah. Well, my first child, Forrest, and he's a darling. I was singing with him in the car today. He's just all my children. I adore them. So with him, we were driving to the hospital and then we got stuck behind this little old lady crossing the road. And I said to my husband, like, just beep her. I'm going to give birth. He's like, I can't. She's old. And I'm like, oh my God. And then he didn't beep her. And then we finally get there and I'm pretty much fully dilated. I almost gave birth at the door. And then we looked at the clock and it was 11:11.
Oh my God.
And then my midwife came out and she goes, "Oh, it's 11:11. I always see that." And I went, "Well, of course you do,"
Yeah.
because I'm wearing an 11:11 shirt. But
Nice.
I was like, "Well, of course you do," because, when she said that, I trusted her. I
Mhm.
felt really good about having her there at the delivery. And, I'm still in touch with her like 7 years later. So not everyone who sees 11:11 has beautiful, pure intentions, but you can feel when they do. And for
Mhm.
me, it's just this little bit of a trust factor.
Yeah,
And it was just so beautiful and that happens, a lot around our kids. Obviously, kids are particularly magnetic for spiritual phenomena.
totally.
And even as a baby, the kids would always type in triple numbers and 11:11s and hold them up and just do really funny things that you could never really,
Yeah.
you could just, it's telling the truth. Truth is
Yeah.
stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't learned. It just is. And before we hit record, you asked me about like seeing patterns of numbers, like over periods of time, like there will be different patterns of numbers that show up. What's the significance in that? Because I mean, I know that I look it up. I mean, I don't, it doesn't go, I don't just shrug and move on. I go and research what are these combinations of numbers.
That's very typical
Wow.
of an 11. So obviously at any one time we are bombarded with stimuli. Thousands and thousands of pieces of information are coming into our consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, when you start to see numbers, it's a very strong indication that you are regaining your clairvoyance, your psychic vision, your
Mm-hmm.
ability to see the future and change the future. And so this is a really exciting thing. However, I guess what sometimes I get frustrated at is, people sometimes just take a screenshot or just go, yay. They don't really look further. But then in a way, you can't make people do stuff. And in the end, I think when people are ready, they often do look deeper, like when they really feel like there's something there. But you're essentially regaining a lot of your psychic powers, your healing gifts. In my experience, having interviewed thousands of people who see repeating numbers. So like every client I work with, I ask the numbers they see and I match it to their chart. My background is science.
Mm-hmm.
There's an absolute correlation. Yeah, 100%. So, for example, a life path 11 would often see 11:11. A life path 3 would often see 3:33. A life path 4 would often see 4:44. That's the first explanation. But apart from that, it could be chakras that need healing, certain spirit guides, certain loved ones, and often a turning point in their chart.
Okay.
So say someone's at a really important turning point in their chart, the numbers will go ballistic and they're trying to let that person know to meditate, to receive the guidance, to trust in the changes that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole bunch of things that will happen once you start researching 11:11.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a 5 to 9 year journey and almost always results in the person becoming a healer. Almost always. They'll open a business and I love it. I certainly wasn't expecting to do that, but I did. And now I've watched a lot of other people do what I call as the flip.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it has to be said, some healers already are in their own business and start seeing it. And I think all it is just an enhancement again.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe bringing in numerology might be a good idea because, people are absolutely fascinated by themselves. And numerology can very much explain a lot of our past.
Mm-hmm.
It can explain conflicts, and it's just really simple. Like you can just do it with, not a lot of tools, just a piece of paper, a pen, a calculator if you need it. You don't really need to know all the different, for example, astrology signs or history. It's just all there in black and white. So it's very bare bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like it.
Why would the chart change? Is it based on just like the current year, or is it because of what other aspects are influencing your
So
chart?
the foundational chart never changes, which is based on the date of birth and the birth certificate name. However, if you change your name, of course, we update the chart. And often I'll work with people to look at the different vibrations. And then, each year you have a personal chart. So I often do 6 to 12 month forecasts. For example, in my business program, every person's had their foundational chart and their 6 to 12 month forecast. And I don't just use numbers, I use palmistry and tarot. So, we would be looking at the numbers and then doing tarot pulls to see whether they're actually working their numbers. Because sometimes you have a number come in and energies come in for beginnings, but you can feel the person's not really owning it. You might pull a card that shows they're a bit stuck, so you do some energy healing or clearing, and then boom, everything starts to happen.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
you have the destiny, but then you also have free will, and it's really important to look at both those things.
Well, I remember when I first learned about tarot, they had you, I guess, break down your life path, and that that number is the card that to identify with in the major arcana?
Yeah, and that's definitely all related. Yeah, numerology and tarot have enormous crossover, and also with astrology and all these ancient sciences. Yeah, and it's always good to have a knowledge of all of them. But it's common that you'd usually go deeply with maybe one or two, just because I think.
Yeah, because from that I knew that the high priestess was the card that I, connected to, and then I was always like pulling that card out of thin air, and it was.
Oh, absolutely. But you'd also be an 11, which can also be the justice or strength card, depending on the deck.
Okay.
Because you see, as a master number yourself, you have the choice of being a 2 or an 11. Not everybody has that choice.
Yeah, that's
good.
good.
And so you activate your 11 probably by talking to other 11s or doing spiritual things, and that's, almost a whole nother conversation. But it's important to remember that master numbers can appear anywhere in the chart, and just because you have it doesn't mean you're better.
Right.
It's just often it's like a skill. It's like a skill that you have. And 11 particularly they're very good at connecting others or connecting to spirit.
I remember one of my friends said that to me. She's like, Karen, I think that one of your special things is bringing people together. I'm like, oh
yeah, that's an 11 thing. Absolutely. And 11 is the well, it's kind of a Jesus number, to be honest, because it's about that grassroots prophet, or the person who kind of tries to walk the talk and gathers people together as equals. Of course, 11 is the 2 equals. And then the 2 is the peacemaker. So 11, you're gathering people together to create more peace and harmony for better relationships. It's a very specific path. And and you can I love the fact that with numerology, it's just got a lot of room for storytelling, and it allows people to kind of view their life in this whole different way that's very kind and very objective and very holistic, and gives them hope again.
And you, I read like on your site how you, like, one of your goals or missions is to transform the public perception of psychics, and I'm like, that's like one of mine too. It's like to just normalize all these things and to just make them more accessible and down to earth. So I thought that was a cool overlap.
Oh, good. Well, you're a 3811, I'm a 2911, so they're a little bit different. Yours will be a little bit more extroverted, and psychic actually adds to 3811, so you're definitely on the right path. And
when the numbers break down to like 38, like the final number to add to make it be 11.
Yeah, so when you're working on a life path, generally
you're looking
so
at
you do need to break your life path down to like a single digit. So you'd be a 3811 2, I'd be a 2911 2.
Okay.
But some numerologists would just break it down to a 2 or an 11. But as I mentioned, I feel like it loses a lot of vital information. A bit like saying, I don't know, you have a Toyota car, but not which model.
Right.
And I've just found myself that it's more valuable to keep all of the information if you can. Sorry, my computer keeps beeping at me. Let me just figure out what it is. I think maybe it's just got too much power. That's hilarious. Yeah, often when I'm doing anything with an 11, my tech goes a bit funny. Things like my screen turn around. I did a call and my computer blew up, and I'm like, okay, calm it down. So now I do a lot more meditation, and I'm like, okay, try to relieve my own nerves.
Right.
It's still happening. It's okay. Anyway, yeah. So did you have any other questions about numbers?
No, I mean, it's just like there's so much to them, and how you break it down and how you get to them, just because I sometimes forget that not everybody already knows this stuff. So that's why I wanted to like go from like the bottom, to not just go talking straight to like, if you want to change the vibration of your house, add a number on the doorway or whatever.
Well, in the end, Karen, I believe everyone does know numerology. I think it's part of what we're versed in when we come down in a human body. And I try to look at it now when I'm teaching. It's just a reactivation or a recovery of the data.
Right.
Because I've had so many children come up to me and we do their life path, and maybe they're a 5 and they go, I know.
Oh,
they're
wow.
like, I know 5 is my favorite number. And their mum will say, oh, she's always loved 5. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's just proving it. And I think at a deep level, we do choose our life path each lifetime, and we wrote our soul contract. When I give people their numerology, it's often quite familiar to them.
Right.
I'm basically just transcribing it for them. I'm a translator.
Yeah.
And so I just love that feeling that you're just recovering it. It's nothing new. And it's the most natural thing in the world to have this inner guidance system. And it's just a very specific one, which is why I like it.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for you sharing with it with everybody. And you also have different programs that you offer and different ways that people can stay in touch and be supported by you, like your Patreon, and you have like
Oh yeah.
a different
Yeah.
course. Yeah, like I know you have a few different things that you offer. Do you want to talk about any of them?
Oh, sure. And I just wanted to mention one thing. So I'm really passionate about people who have a spiritual business because I know the odds are against us, especially
Mhm.
small business. You know, I think 50, 60% will close within a few years. So really passionate about helping people with that. And I love helping parents or people who want to have kids. So often you see the child and the parent's numerology correlates perfectly.
Mhm.
And it just gives you, it's such a lovely experience. Like, for example, I have a turning point at 53 in my palmistry and my numbers. And my son is a number 18 life path. And when he's 18, I'm 53.
Huh.
So his biggest turning point in his life is also a huge turning point in my chart.
Oh,
And
that's
it just shows you that children research their parents. It's not an accident. They choose us.
Mhm.
We still need to look after them, of course, but that's one of my favorite things is doing family numerology charts.
That's
And
cool.
I really encourage people to do that for themselves when they start. Don't just do your own numbers, do your children's, your partners, your mums, and your dads.
Mhm.
And it's probably just the best use of the information to begin with. And it will help you to convince your inner skeptic that it's real.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of how people can connect with me, it's pretty easy. Just sarahayip.com or Facebook, The Numbers Queen, Instagram, sarahayip1111. I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah, I talk a lot online. I do a lot of media. They can study with me through Patreon or courses. I've got a lot of demand actually for people wanting to learn numerology, so I'll probably have to get that going again. I've been I had to slow down a bit because I had 3 little boys in 5 years,
Right.
but I'm sort of coming back now. And yeah, and I also do sort of more intensive work one-on-one with people. A lot of my clients I've worked with for like over a decade. And yeah, I guess what I love about numerology, it is a language and it connects you directly with your spirit. There's no middle person.
Right.
And it's just, it's so much fun. Like everywhere you go, you start to see numbers and you actually know what they mean. And it's like this little secret joke you have. And so it's like you always have a smile on your face from that point onwards.
It was like a meme with like a Family Guy. What's Stewie? You know, the little boy in Family Guy, or whatever, the baby adult, and he was drinking a martini, and he was like saying how his life was like all messed up, and then he's like, and then it's like flash, like clock flashes 11, perfect, and he's like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. You know, it's almost just like you're like it's like a wink and a nod from the universe. So that's awesome. And your time right now is 11:11, so that's perfect.
Yeah, yes, that's pretty much how it works. And I tell you what, once you start doing numerology, you don't have to do much advertising because people will find you. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, people come up to me all the time, and yeah, and I try to. That's why I say to healers, like, learn some basic numerology. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for your clients. It's good for the planet.
Mhm.
Because I don't just use it to help people. You know, I use it to help animals. I use it to read the Earth's energies, and it's just it's very accessible, and it's a gift. It's a gift to yourself and to others.
One of my clients, like I said, she does numerology, but she also combines it with astrology. So she's
Sure.
looking at the, you know, the degrees that the planets are, and she'll be like, today's a whatever day of all these combinations of numbers. So it's so cool. It's like it's endless, probably, you know, if you wanted to break it down, because it's like I just knew the very basic stuff. And like when I first went to college is when the internet was new. So I was
Yeah.
one of the first things I paid for online was an astrology report and a numerology report. And
Sure.
it's like in 1996, you know. So and I still have those reports printed out that I paid for and, you know, sitting in a drawer somewhere. Um, but it's more than just one aspect. It's just continual. Like even
It's a living thing, and it's important to have people in your life who are perhaps professionals at it, because then you can ask them all the questions and really equip yourself. So I was going to say, so you're a 3811. So do you remember any new beginnings or big turning points around 38?
um
2016,
28, I
2017?
think 38 is the year I moved here. I moved, was it, how old am I? Yeah. What year would that be? 7 years ago? Yeah, we moved here 8 years ago. So, but it was a big transition, you know, of just moving into this new house, and my kids were
Yeah.
8 and 10, and was
Yeah.
able to start my business again. So right around that time, I think I was 37 when we moved. But
Sure. So it would have been you sort of getting back into the swing of things. And 11 is a lot about double beginnings and double endings.
mhm.
And I always say if you meet an 11 and they tell you their life story, you'll never believe it. I've met a lot of 11s and I've got a whole list of famous ones on my site, and they really do have the most unusual lives, the things that they've tried, the people they've met, and it's very sort of futuristic. And yeah, of course, I love all the numbers, but it's just been very helpful for me to understand my 11ness. And actually, my husband, who's number one, so he's very straightforward, he's like, I should just do a podcast on how to like marry an 11. And I was like, well, you should. You'd be very successful because all the 11s would buy it for their husbands and wives.
Right. I'm sure. I'd be interested to hear what it all breaks down.
Oh, yeah, no, he's got very strong opinions because we've done a lot of psychic readings together. We met on television and I encouraged him to go into psychic work, which he did after doing a lot of TV. And yeah, we've done a lot of readings together. And yeah, 11s are very unusual people. And I actually have a theory now. So everyone I meet, pretty much they're either an 11 or they have an 11 in their life. Otherwise, I feel like it's just too much for them. So it's funny. Yeah, it's I'm sure a lot of your viewers will find that they're either 11s or have 11s in their life now.
Right.
And they always look, 11s always give 11 out of 10. They're wonderful therapists, they're wonderful counselors and healers because they really try. But their biggest challenge, of course, is you see the 11, there's nothing in the middle. So they really have to learn about balance and the middle path and while walking their talk, as I said.
Mm-hmm. And when I reached out to you, you were like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about New York. Like, I don't remember what was going on for you but you're like, you must be in tune if you thought to reach out.
I had just launched World Changes. I launched World Changes on the 6th of July, which is this program I've been dreaming of for, my whole life pretty much, just to help people to beat the odds and succeed in the spotlight, spiritual people, sensitive people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was around that time that you contacted me, and my program's a lot about getting people like protected, guided, and like confident in the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought it was great because, of course, doing this type of program is one way to get that experience, and we're always helping each other, of course, interviewee.
Yeah, that's really cool. I just remember you being like, oh, and you were thinking about it. I'm like, okay, I don't know. All I do is I just listen. Like if I hate the urge, I follow it. I don't over.
Yeah, well, that's very 11. 11s have this little antenna.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you'll have a lot of very interesting things happen after this call as well. It'll just continue.
Yeah, I never cease to be amazed by the way things unfold and the connections made and all of that. So
yeah,
I'm grateful that you took some time to talk to me because I know you're busy too. So
totally love it. Thank you so much. And I wanted to mention also, Karen, that your name, Karen, is a master 22, which is 11 plus 11, and then Karen Foot adds to 4711, which is interesting. That's of course another master 11, and 47 is it's the vibration of things like meditation, mental health, mental illness. And what did you say your age was?
45.
So you have an enormous career turning point at 47. That's something to look forward to. I'm sure that's one of the reasons that we've met. Yeah, and it's just something to look forward to. It's going to happen, but it's just even just having that anticipation and allowing yourself to dream big, it's really important.
No, that's really cool. That's neat to know. I know. I wonder what the future.
Well, my name's Sarah Yip, 43, and I'm 42. And when I got married, I had the option to change my name, which I did legally for my kids, but in my professional sense, I kept Sarah Yip. Sarah Yip has a 43 vibration, and I'm 42. So I was like, I'm not changing it till I find out what happens at 43. Which it might be a book or something, but I was just having a laugh because it has given me much more confidence to make decisions and stick to them instead of always changing my mind. It's just really I feel really solid in myself now. Mm-hmm. And even my kids got sick recently and I was really worried about them, but then I looked at their numbers and I could see they're both going into 9 months, which is about purging and releasing, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. And I went, oh, thank God, it's actually going to be over really soon, and it's all really natural. So I'm just going to support them instead of trying to control it.
Yeah, totally. I know my own kids had random vomit experiences in the last couple of weeks, like separately from each other. It wasn't an illness; it just kind of spontaneously came, and I was like, "What?"
Well, it's July was I do forecasts every month on my website. So July was a 5 months of clearing the throat chakra. So, I mean, that's definitely part of it. Then we've got the alien full moon in the next day in Aquarius, which of course 11 is the Aquarius number. So, I guess people just can no longer keep inside what is bothering them. That's really what vomiting is representing. And so expect, a lot of very interesting developments after they've cleared their energies. I can certainly see, me and my husband both said both of our boys are about to have growth spurts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're less letting go of anything that wasn't agreeing with them. And then I know they're going to just probably be a lot stronger and more assertive now.
That's cool. Yeah, and they're what, 5, 3, and 1 or something, or
Well,
what?
I've got what are they? 7, 5, and 2, but they're all pretty much like old men.
Yeah.
If you talk to them, you'll see it in their eyes and just the way that they move. And they've certainly been together before many, many times. And my husband and I definitely feel outnumbered.
Yeah, yeah. You are with 3 kids.
But that's okay because we use a lot of spiritual techniques to protect them and guide them, and we call in our ancestors and stuff. So I feel okay. I've got my invisible truth.
Protected, for sure, for sure. I know. It's like you're not alone, and you're not, and you have the support. It's like,
Yeah, that's very much the theme of 2023. The crown chakra opening, going from you are not alone to you are all one.
oh, that's cool. I like that.
Well, alone to all one, it's just a little extra energy, isn't it? And yeah, I feel like it's very much coming. I feel a lot of beautiful things are happening in September this year for the planet, but it's all about, being aware, being open, and celebrating the small wins, because we're still co-creating the future. It's not, like I said, it's not set in stone. We still have to meet spirit halfway. But
Yeah.
this type of work, this type of podcast is contributing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh yeah, thank you too. I really appreciate it. So, and then I'll share all of your contact information in the notes, and people can just look you up, Sarah with an H, right? SARAH.
Yeah, yeah. And where are you based again?
I'm in northern New Jersey, close to New
Well,
York.
I'll have to come and visit you because I'm pretty sure I've got some relatives around there.
Yeah. I'm like 20 minutes from New York, so 20
Oh
minutes,
yeah.
no traffic. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. I have a pretty strong feeling that we'll be able to work something out. So I'll put it out there to the
there's
Angel
a
Express.
familiar connection with you for sure. So I'd be happy.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'll catch up
Yeah.
with you again, Karen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.